You know, usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there is this expectation of like absolute precision.
Right, yeah. Like it is a very mechanical, straightforward process.
Exactly. It feels like engineering. You break your arm, you go to the hospital, the X-ray shows that jagged white line on the black background, right?
Yes, and the doctor just points right at it.
Yeah, they point and say, well, there it is. That is the problem.
Because it is entirely visible, which makes it, highly categorizable. You can point to the fracture, you can measure it.
And most importantly, everyone around you can see that you are injured. They open doors for you. They sign your cast.
Exactly. The injury is validated by the people around you without you even having to ask.
But then you step into the world of trauma, specifically the profound betrayal trauma that follows a scam. And suddenly that X-ray machine is just broken.
It is completely useless in this context, yeah.
We are looking at a diagnostic landscape that is incredibly murky. The injury is invisible. And because it is invisible, society often, misinterprets it.
Oh, absolutely. They reduce it to a mere emotional reaction, like someone is just sad or embarrassed.
Right. Rather than what it actually is.
It is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters. The injury cannot be captured on an imaging scan, but it is an entirely fundamentally physical reality.
Happening right inside your nervous system.
Yes, exactly.
Welcome to this Scars Institute Exploration podcast. Today we are taking on a subject that is incredibly serious, deeply grounded, and, well, fundamentally critical for anyone who has survived a scam.
It really is the foundation of recovery.
It is. And before we go a single step further, if you are listening to this right now and you have been the victim of a scam, we need you to hear this core message loud and clear.
This is so important.
What happened was not your fault. You are not alone, and the Scars Institute is here to help.
That reality right there is the foundation of everything we are going to unpack today. The blame for the deception rests entirely, unequivocally, on the criminals.
The people who architected the scam.
Exactly. It never rests on the person who was targeted. Never.
So our mission today is to explore a fascinating, highly practical, and scientifically grounded approach to recovering from the betrayal trauma caused by those very criminals.
And it is an approach I think a lot of people will find incredibly surprising.
Definitely. We are going to look at a tool that is entirely free, requires no special medical equipment, no expensive copays.
And it is probably sitting right there in your living room right now.
Yeah, literally right in front of you. We are sourcing this exploration today from the article on the Scars Institute Scams Now magazine. The piece is titled Repetition for Healing, A Guide for Scam Victims 2026.
It is an incredibly profound document. Honestly, it takes highly complex neurological concepts and just translates them into actionable, accessible recovery strategies.
And we want to make sure we give full, exact credit to the author of this deeply important work. The article was written by Professor Tim McGuinness, Ph.D.
Yeah.
He is certified in trauma-informed care, a recoverologist, anthropologist, scientist, polymath, and the director of the Society of Citizens Against Relationship Scams, Inc.
A truly incredible background to bring to this specific issue.
Absolutely.
And just to set the parameters for our discussion today, I'm going to give a brief disclaimer.
Please do.
This exploration is for educational and self-help purposes. It does not replace professional medical or mental health advice. If you are experiencing severe distress, it is vital to consult a qualified mental health professional.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So to truly understand the cure that Professor McGuinness is proposing here, we really have to start by understanding the injury itself.
We have to completely reframe it.
Right. We have to move away from the abstract societal idea of, being scammed, which people often incorrectly reduce to just a financial mistake.
Or like a naive error.
Yeah.
Or just an embarrassing story you want to hide.
Yeah, exactly. We have to look at the biological, neurological reality of what is actually happening inside your body. Why are we calling this a physical injury?
Well, the shift in perspective from emotional event to physical injury changes everything about how you approach recovery. Everything. Because when we talk about the trauma response in the context of a scam, we're really talking about a physiological hijacking.
A physiological hijacking.
Yes. When you are deceived, manipulated, and profoundly betrayed like that, your body's threat response system is instantly triggered.
Right, the alarm bells go off.
Exactly. And your brain, it does not distinguish between the psychological attack of a scammer subverting your reality and the physical attack of a predator chasing you through the woods.
Wait, really? The brain literally cannot tell the difference.
Not at the level of the sympathetic nervous system, no. The biological alarm bell rings the exact same way for both.
That is wild because, we usually think of the fight or flight response as a temporary state. Like,
Yeah.
you swerve to avoid a car accident, your heart is pounding, your hands are shaking on the steering wheel.
Right, you get that massive adrenaline dump.
Yeah, but then 20 minutes later, you are calm again. You pull over, you breathe, the threat is gone.
The physical threat is gone, yes, but the psychological threat of a scam lingers because it attacks the very foundation of how you perceive the world.
It breaks your reality.
Yes. So when that alarm bell rings in response to a profound deception, your sympathetic nervous system just kicks into absolute overdrive. It floods your bloodstream with cortisol and adrenaline.
The stress hormones.
Exactly. The article refers to this state as stress hormone overactivation. And these hormones are brilliant survival mechanisms in the short term.
Because they keep you alive in a real physical emergency.
Right. They shunt blood away from your digestive system and push it into your muscles. They dilate your pupils. They literally prepare you to fight for your life or run for your life.
And this is the crazy part, you cannot punch a scammer who is operating from thousands of miles away behind a fake internet profile.
Exactly. There is nothing to physically fight.
And you cannot literally run away from a bank statement showing a zero balance. So that energy, all those stress hormones, they just sit there.
Flooding the system with nowhere to go.
Yes, they just flood the body constantly.
And that sustained release is incredibly toxic over time. It leads to severe physical exhaustion, cognitive fog, and profound emotional depletion.
I mean, your body is essentially running a marathon every single day while you are just, sitting in your kitchen trying to process what happened.
That is a great way to put it. You're running an internal marathon.
And the psychological attack here feels unique compared to other traumas. I mean, if someone mugs you on the street, it is absolutely terrifying. But it doesn't necessarily make you question whether the sky is blue.
Right. It is a localized physical threat.
But a scam, it attacks your basic ability to trust your own perceptions. You believed a person was real, or you believed an investment was sound.
You trusted your own judgment.
And then the revelation that it was a lie completely shatters your internal compass.
And that shattering is the catalyst for what Professor McGuinness calls the hypervigilance cycle.
The hypervigilance cycle.
Okay.
Break that down for us.
Well, because your reality was fundamentally subverted, your brain makes a sweeping generalization to keep you safe. It essentially says, our perception failed us. The environment is inherently dangerous, and we cannot trust our own judgment anymore.
Oh, wow. So the brain just decides everything is a threat now.
Everything. So it begins constantly scanning for threats 24 hours a day, even when no immediate danger actually exists.
So you find yourself overanalyzing every single email you get.
Yes. Or questioning the motives of lifelong friends. Jumping out of your skin at the sound of the doorbell. You are perpetually on guard.
It sounds incredibly isolating. I mean, if your brain is telling you that nothing and no one is safe, the natural reaction is to just pull back from the world entirely.
And we see that consistently with survivors. It manifests as a deep social withdrawal response.
Because the betrayal was relational.
Exactly. It was perpetrated by another human being. So the victim tends to avoid human interactions entirely out of fear. The heightened threat perception makes isolation feel like the only viable defense mechanism you have left.
But isolation just breeds more anxiety, doesn't it?
Yes, it creates a devastating feedback loop.
Because inside that isolation, you aren't even safe from your own mind. Because the brain keeps trying to solve the puzzle of the trauma while you are sitting there alone.
Right. It attempts to process the unresolved threat through what the article calls intrusive memory replay.
Intrusive memory replay, like flashbacks.
Yes, these are the highly distressing memories of the scam. Maybe the exact wording of a text message, or the realization moment when you check the account, or the confrontation, and they repeat involuntarily.
Just popping into your head out of nowhere.
Constantly interrupting your concentration and even your sleep. The brain is trying to make sense of the deception so it can prevent it from happening again.
But it can't.
No, because the deception was so complex and malicious, the brain just ends up spinning its wheels. It just keeps the nervous system inflamed.
Which naturally leads to massive emotional dysregulation. I mean, you might experience intense mood swings or flashes of intense anger.
Or the complete opposite, actually.
Like what?
An emotional numbing response, where you just feel totally detached and hollow.
Because your system has basically blown a fuse.
Exactly. It blows a fuse to protect itself from the overwhelming distress. The nervous system ultimately gets stuck.
Stuck in what the article calls survival mode persistence.
Yes. It completely loses the ability to return to its natural baseline. It cannot find its equilibrium.
Brings us to a massive, massive hurdle in the traditional recovery process. Because when someone goes through a trauma, society's immediate reflexive advice is usually, you need to go talk to someone about this.
Go get into therapy immediately, yes.
Right. But we are looking at this differently today.
Yes. Therapy is an undeniably vital component of long-term healing. I want to be clear about that. However, in the immediate raw aftermath of a profound scam, intense talk therapy can actually be counterproductive.
Really? Counterproductive?
Yes, if the nervous system has not achieved a baseline of regulation first.
Let's explore why that is, because that goes against a lot of conventional wisdom. If I go into a therapist's office 3 days after discovering my entire life savings was stolen by someone I thought I loved, and the therapist asks me to recount the details of the betrayal, what is actually happening biologically in that moment?
Biologically, you are simulating the threat all over again. As you recount the details, your brain, which is already stuck in that survival mode persistence, cannot differentiate between talking about the trauma and experiencing the trauma.
Oh, man. So it thinks it's happening right then.
Yes. The cortisol spikes again, the adrenaline floods the system again. The therapy session itself literally becomes a triggering event.
You're thrust right back into fight or flight.
Exactly. Which completely prevents any actual cognitive processing from taking place anyway.
I think about this like a car alarm that has been triggered in a grocery store parking lot. The alarm is blaring, the horn is honking, the lights are flashing, but the key fob is broken.
Right, you cannot turn it off.
You can't turn it off. It just keeps screaming until it drains the battery completely dead. And if traditional therapy requires you to sit there and analytically dissect the engine to find the short circuit, which is essentially what unpacking trauma requires.
Right, getting under the hood.
How are you supposed to do that delicate, complex work while the alarm is deafening you? I mean, you can't fix the engine while the alarm is blasting right in your ear. You have to find a way to shut the alarm off first.
And that's exactly it. The engine cannot be repaired under those conditions. You need quiet. You need stillness. And the approach Dr. McGuinness proposes is designed to provide exactly that.
And he focuses on two specific concepts here.
Yes, cognitive overload avoidance and neural reset protocols.
Okay, let's translate those terms for everyone. Cognitive overload avoidance sounds like actively deciding not to use your brain.
That is actually a very good way to put it. It is the deliberate, strategic choice to engage in activities that demand virtually zero mental effort, zero problem solving, and zero analytical thinking.
You are actively protecting your nervous system from any additional cognitive strain.
Yes, you are giving it a break.
And what about neural reset protocols? What are those?
These are structured, predictable patterns of behavior designed to restore balance. They act as a backdoor into the nervous system.
Bypassing the conscious mind entirely.
Exactly. Bypassing the panicked conscious mind to soothe the overactivated threat response at a physical level. We are looking for a way to reset the system without asking the system to do any heavy lifting.
Which brings us to the core thesis of this entire exploration today. The traumatized brain is basically trapped in a state of chaotic unpredictability. And the antidote to that chaos, strangely enough, is profound predictability.
The traumatized brain essentially craves spoilers.
It craves spoilers. I love that framing.
It really does.
To understand why predictability is the ultimate medicine for this specific injury, we really have to look at how the human brain functions at a baseline level, right?
Yes. The brain is fundamentally a prediction machine.
A prediction machine.
Its primary job, every second of every day, is to anticipate what is going to happen next based on your past experiences.
So like if I reach for my coffee mug right now, my brain is predicting how heavy it will be, how hot the ceramic will feel, and exactly how the handle will fit in my fingers, all before I even physically touch it.
Exactly. And when you pick it up and the mug matches those predictions perfectly, your brain registers a successful interaction.
A little tiny victory.
Right. And this happens millions of times a day.
Mm.
You expect the floor to hold your weight when you walk. You expect the sun to rise in the morning. You expect a green traffic light to mean the cross traffic will stop.
We take all of that for granted.
We do. But this constant successful anticipation creates what neurologists call predictive coding stability. When the world behaves the exact way your brain predicts it will, your nervous system feels safe.
But a scam is the ultimate catastrophic failure of the prediction machine.
It is an absolutely devastating failure.
Yeah.
The victim predicted that the person they were talking to was honest. They predicted the investment platform was a real institution. They predicted their money was secure in the bank.
And when the scam is finally revealed, the brain doesn't just realize it made one little mistake.
No, it realizes its entire predictive model is flawed. The entire foundation cracks. The brain concludes, well, if we were this wrong about something so incredibly important, we could be wrong about everything.
Nothing is safe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nothing is safe.
It is like the brain is saying, I got it so wrong last time and it almost destroyed us. I can never, ever trust my own guesses again.
So the world feels inherently unpredictable. And to the primitive parts of the brain, unpredictability equals lethal danger.
Wow.
To heal this, we cannot just tell the victim to go trust themselves again.
Right, you cannot logic your way out of a physiological threat response.
Exactly. We have to give the brain exactly what it craves but feels it cannot find in the real world.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. Absolute predictability.
We literally have to manually feed the machine correct predictions until it finally calms down.
That is the essence of Dr. McGuinness's concept of familiar outcome assurance.
Familiar outcome assurance.
It involved deliberately engaging with media and experiences where you already know with 100% certainty exactly what is going to happen.
So this means watching a favorite movie for the 100th time, rereading a book where you have already memorized the ending, listening to an album you know every single lyric to.
Yes, exactly that.
You're not talking about just killing time or distracting yourself, are we?
Not at all. The article outlines the neuroscience, showing that this repetition is a mechanical, biological intervention.
Let's unpack the neurological mechanisms behind this, because understanding the why removes the stigma of the behavior. If people understand it is medicine, they won't feel guilty.
That is so true. The first mechanism ties directly into what we just discussed, predictive validation.
Okay, predictive validation.
When you turn on a movie you have seen 50 times, your brain is actually still making predictions. It predicts the main character will walk through a specific door, wear a specific coat, and say a specific line.
And then, literally 2 seconds later, the character does exactly that.
And your brain registers a win. It registers a successful prediction. Over the course of a 2-hour movie, your brain is logging thousands of perfectly accurate predictions.
Thousands of them.
Yes. And this creates a massive influx of familiarity-based safety signaling. The brain interprets this known, predictable experience as absolute safety.
So it starts to relax.
It begins to manually power down the defensive threat responses. You are overriding the chaos of the scam with the rigid certainty of the script.
That makes so much sense. It is like physical therapy for your trust missiles. You are starting with the lightest possible weight, which is a movie script, and proving to your brain that it can still be right about things.
I really like that physical therapy analogy. Moving to the second mechanism, we look at the brain's default mode network.
The default mode network.
This is a complex network of brain regions that become active when you are not focused on the outside world, when you are not trying to solve a puzzle, and you are not engaged in goal-oriented tasks. It's the network associated with rest, internal reflection, and daydreaming.
But when you are hyper-vigilant from a scam, that network is probably totally shut down, right?
Yeah.
Because you are obsessed with scanning the outside world for threats. You aren't daydreaming.
It is highly suppressed, yes. The energy is entirely diverted to the threat detection centers, like the amygdala.
Got it.
But when you engage in an activity that is entirely familiar and repetitive, like watching a television show you know by heart, you require virtually no cognitive effort to follow the plot.
Because you already know it.
This profound lack of mental demand allows the brain to shift energy away from the hyperactive threat centers and re-engage the default mode network. You are essentially allowing the brain to idle.
You are taking the engine out of gear. You know, you are still sitting in the car, the engine is running, but you aren't forcing it to tow a heavy load up a mountain anymore. You are just letting it hum quietly in the driveway.
And while it hums, the third mechanism comes into play, which involves memory consolidation.
Memory consolidation.
We know that trauma creates highly intrusive, dominant memory pathways. The memories of the scam burn deep, deep grooves into the neural circuitry.
The bad memories feel like a massive superhighway, and any other thought is just like a tiny dirt road.
Repetition is how we build new highways. When you re-engage with deeply familiar, comforting media, you are actively firing the neural pathways associated with positive, safe, or neutral memories.
Okay, so every time you rewatch that safe movie, you strengthen that specific pathway.
Yes, you are building structural resilience in the brain. Over time, these strengthened pathways of comfort and safety begin to robustly compete with the traumatic pathways. It balances the internal emotional landscape.
You are giving the brain a different, safer track to run its train on. If the trauma is forcing the train down a dark tunnel, the repetition is slowly laying down track through a sunny meadow.
Exactly. And the fourth mechanism addresses the profound chemical imbalance caused by the trauma, specifically regarding dopamine.
Ah, dopamine, the reward chemical.
Right. Scams, especially relationship and investment scams, are notorious for hijacking the brain's reward system. The scammer basically manufactures massive dopamine spikes.
The thrill of a new romance, or the ecstasy of a fake financial windfall.
Yes, and then the scam is revealed and the dopamine doesn't just drop, it completely crashes. The reward system is left starved and deeply dysregulated.
The victim's receptors are just completely erratic at that point.
They are. They might seek out extreme stimuli just to feel anything, or they might feel completely anhedonic, which means they are unable to experience joy at all.
Yeah, they just feel flat.
Exactly. Unpredictable new media can actually exacerbate this, causing anxiety spikes rather than pleasure. However, deeply familiar, enjoyable content releases dopamine in a steady, reliable, predictable drip.
Because you know the joke is coming. You anticipate the laugh, and the laugh delivers exactly the chemical reward you expected it to.
It provides consistent reward signals without any risk of a crash or a surprise trigger. It repairs the disrupted neurotransmitters gently without overstimulating an already fragile system.
And what is the final piece of the neuroscience puzzle here?
It involves the vagus nerve.
The vagus nerve.
Yes, the vagus nerve is the superhighway of the parasympathetic nervous system. It wanders from your brainstem all the way down through your chest and into your abdomen. It interacts with your heart, your lungs, and your digestive tract.
So it touches almost everything.
It does. And when you experience the genuine comfort, safety, and subtle enjoyment derived from deeply familiar content, it actually stimulates the ventral vagal complex.
Which triggers the rest and digest response.
Yes, it is the biological brake pedal. It actively lowers your heart rate. It reduces your blood pressure. It signals to your lungs to take deeper, slower breaths.
Wow.
It tells your digestive system that it is safe to resume normal function. You are literally using a television show or a book to manually engage the physiological opposite of the fight-or-flight response.
That is incredible. I want to pause here, though, and look at a very common modern habit through this specific lens.
Okay.
Because if the goal is just to zone out, reduce cognitive load, and look at a screen, why wouldn't my social media feed work for this? I mean, if I lie in bed for 3 hours doom scrolling through short videos, I'm technically resting my body, and I'm not doing complex math. Does that achieve this neural reset?
The source material is completely unequivocal on this point.
Yeah.
Doom scrolling random videos absolutely does not work, and in fact, it actively harms the recovery process.
Wait, really? Why is a social media feed different than a favorite movie? I mean, they are both screens.
Because a social media feed is fundamentally unpredictable. It completely lacks the predictive reinforcement we just discussed. When you swipe to the next video, you have absolutely zero idea what is coming.
Screw.
It might be a funny animal, which gives a tiny dopamine hit. The next swipe might be a news story about a tragedy, which instantly spikes your cortisol. The next swipe might be someone talking about fraud, which instantly triggers your betrayal trauma.
It is literally a slot machine for your brain.
It's the ultimate unpredictable sensory environment. The brain is constantly assessing new, unknown stimuli every 15 seconds.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. This forces the brain to remain in a state of low-level hypervigilance. You are gambling with your nervous system, hoping the algorithm gives you something soothing, but knowing it could easily deliver a threat. A favorite movie, on the other hand, is a guaranteed payout of absolute safety.
So we have the biological justification here. We know the X-ray shows a broken nervous system, and we know that predictability is the cast that sets the bone. So how do we practically bring this into our living rooms? How does a survivor take this heavy neuroscience and turn it into, a Tuesday afternoon routine?
The practical application begins with curating what the article calls a comfort content library.
A comfort content library.
Yes, this is a deliberate, thoughtful process of selecting the specific tools for your recovery.
What qualifies a piece of media for this library exactly? Because I have favorite movies that are, quite honestly, incredibly intense.
The defining metric is not just how much you like it, but how soothing its predictability is. You are looking for content that brings genuine, gentle comfort. It must be media you know exceptionally well.
So no new releases.
Right. Crucially, it should not be highly stimulating, emotionally devastating, or action-packed, even if you do know the ending.
So, if my favorite movie is a massive war epic with huge explosions and profound tragedy, I should probably leave that on the shelf for now. because the explosions, even if I can predict them, are still loud auditory startles for a sensitive nervous system.
Exactly. You want gentle certainty. Sitcoms you have watched for years are perfect. Cozy mystery novels where you already know who the culprit is and that justice is always served. Music albums from a peaceful time in your life that hold deep, safe meaning.
What about games?
You could even use video games, provided they are games you have already completed. Games where the mechanics are just muscle memory and the storyline is entirely known. The goal is to eliminate surprises completely.
So I have my stack of familiar DVDs, I have my favorite worn-out paperbacks, and my safe music playlists, but I imagine if I just binge them randomly whenever the mood strikes, it won't be as effective. The brain needs environmental predictability too, right?
The environment and the timing are just as important as the content itself. You need to create a repetition ritual structure.
The repetition ritual structure.
Yes. This means establishing a specific, consistent time each day dedicated entirely to this practice.
How much time are we dedicating here?
The protocol recommends relatively short, contained sessions, usually about 15 to 30 minutes.
Really? Why so short? I mean, if watching it for 30 minutes is good for your brain, wouldn't watching it for 6 hours be better?
Because you are using this as a medical intervention, not an escape hatch from reality. If you sit for 6 hours, you risk crossing the line from healthy regulation into dissociation or severe lethargy. The goal is to use the media to regulate your nervous system so you can return to your life, not to hide from your life permanently.
Okay, that is a crucial distinction. And the consistency of the timing matters just as much as the content itself, you said?
We call this recovery timing consistency. When you engage in your repetition ritual at the exact same time every single day, you add a macro layer of predictability to the micro-predictability of the media.
Oh, I see.
If you do this every day at lunch, for instance, your brain begins to anticipate the safety. It knows, well, no matter how chaotic the morning was, at 12:30, we will be safe.
It creates a structural anchor in a day that might otherwise feel terrifyingly unmoored.
Exactly. You might choose the morning to establish a stable baseline before facing the day, or you might choose the evening to actively de-escalate the day's accumulated stress and prepare the nervous system for a restful night of sleep. The specific time matters far less than the unwavering consistency of that time.
But when I am sitting there for my 30 minutes watching my safe sitcom, how is this different from the passive, mindless television watching I did before the trauma? Am I supposed to be doing something internally?
You are practicing mindful engagement. This is a subtle but vital distinction.
Mindful engagement. What does that look like?
Mindful engagement does not mean analyzing the plot or trying to derive deep meaning from the dialogue. It means maintaining a gentle, passive awareness of your own body's physical response as you absorb the familiar content.
So I am noticing the physical relief wash over me.
You are tuning in to the biological shifts. You notice that your shoulders have finally dropped an inch. You feel the tension releasing from your jaw. You observe that your breathing has deepened and slowed down.
You are basically bearing witness to your own nervous system finding safety.
Yes.
This brings me back to the plaster cast metaphor. Because when you put a cast on a broken leg, the fiberglass and plaster don't possess magical healing properties. They don't knit the bone back together themselves.
Oh, no, they don't.
The cast's only job is to hold the environment perfectly, rigidly still. It creates a completely predictable, immovable space around the trauma so that the body's own miraculous biological mechanisms can do the actual healing without being constantly re-injured every single time you try to take a step.
That analogy captures the exact architecture of this therapy perfectly. The repetition ritual is the cast for the traumatized nervous system. Watching the sitcom doesn't magically erase the betrayal of the scammer, but the profound predictability of the sitcom holds the neurological environment perfectly still. It prevents further disruption, creating the routine-based stability required for your natural neuroplasticity to finally begin repairing the damage.
So let's say a survivor implements this. They have their library, they have their daily 30-minute ritual, and they are starting to feel a slight, subtle return of their baseline regulation. But life doesn't stop. They still have to deal with the fallout of the scam.
Yes, the real world is still there.
They have to go to the bank, they have to talk to the police, they have to navigate a world that is still full of sudden triggers. How do we take this tool out of the living room and use it as a real-time defense mechanism?
Once the daily baseline is established, you can scale the practice into short-duration regulation sessions. You begin using extreme predictability as an active, on-the-go intervention for what the article terms trigger response interruption.
Trigger response interruption. Give me a scenario. Let's say I am a survivor and I have to call the fraud department at my bank. Just looking at the phone makes my chest tight. I can feel the panic attack building in the back of my throat. How do I use this?
Before you make the call, or even during the call, if you are placed on hold and feel the panic rising, you deploy a microdose of predictability.
A microdose.
It might be a 5-minute intervention. You put in your earbuds and listen to a specific song that always centers you. You pull up a YouTube clip of the most familiar, comforting movie scene you know. You read a single, deeply beloved poem you carry in your pocket.
I am injecting a massive dose of known outcome into a highly unknown, threatening situation.
You are actively interrupting the stress response before the biochemical cascade fully takes over. A panic attack requires momentum to peak. By forcing the brain to process something entirely familiar, you break that momentum.
You prove to your nervous system in real time that you can command safety even in a hostile environment.
Yes. And there's another layer to this, which involves how we form memories of safety through physical action. The article talks about expanding the toolkit beyond just screens and audio.
Oh, right. Because the brain processes safety comprehensively.
It does, which includes proprioception and physical movement. We call this sensory familiarity anchoring. You integrate physical movement with familiar outcome assurance. You begin to perform simple, non-stressful physical activities that you have executed countless times before.
Like what? What counts as a kinetic repetition?
Making a loaf of bread using a recipe you have made 50 times. You know exactly how the flour feels on your hands, how the yeast smells, and precisely what the end result will look and taste like.
That makes sense.
Or knitting a scarf using a basic repetitive stitch that requires no pattern reading. Walking a highly familiar route through a quiet park where you know every single bend in the path.
The physical action requires almost zero cognitive effort, but it occupies the hands and the body in a steady, rhythmic, predictable loop.
And that rhythmic physical loop sends massive safety signals up the vagus nerve to the brain. It basically says we are moving our body and nothing dangerous is happening. We are safe in our physical environment.
The ultimate progression of this involves other people, which frankly seems terrifying given the social withdrawal we discussed earlier. But the text talks about connecting through shared repetition.
It is the most advanced stage of the protocol. Shared repetition involves finding communities where others engage in similar, predictable practices.
Communities based on repetition.
Yes. This could be joining an online forum dedicated to discussing your favorite classic television show, or a local book club focused entirely on rereading beloved classics rather than challenging new literature.
I can see the profound value in that because the betrayal isolated you from humanity, so the ultimate healing has to involve bridging back to humanity at some point.
It does.
But consider the internal friction here. If my nervous system is barely holding it together, if I still struggle to trust the barista at the coffee shop, the idea of joining a book club or logging into a forum sounds like climbing Mount Everest. It feels entirely overwhelming.
And if you forced it, it would be overwhelming. Which is why gradual exposure regulation is the guiding principle here.
Yeah.
We are not suggesting you leap from total isolation into a crowded room. Gradual exposure is the careful, self-directed process of introducing slightly more complex stimuli over a long period.
It's like taking the plaster cast off and starting physical therapy. You don't immediately go run a marathon, you just practice putting a little bit of weight on the foot.
Exactly. You start alone in your bedroom with a 5-minute song. Weeks later, you progress to the 30-minute daily ritual. Months later, perhaps you take the familiar walk. And eventually, only when your baseline regulation naturally supports it, you might post one anonymous comment on a forum about a television show.
You go at your own pace.
The progression is dictated entirely by your internal sense of safety. You are connecting over the shared predictability of the media, which completely removes the intense pressure of having to explain your trauma, your grief, or your current emotional state to other people. You are just talking about the plot of a safe show.
So a survivor maps all of this out. They understand the neuroscience, they build their library, they set their schedule. But inevitably, they are going to hit psychological roadblocks, largely because of the culture we live in. We live in a society that fetishizes productivity and forward momentum. If you tell your friends or family, my recovery plan involves watching the same season of The Office every day, the external judgment and the internal shame is going to be incredibly loud.
The societal conditioning around how we are, quote-unquote, supposed to spend our time is a massive barrier to trauma recovery. The article anticipates this and directly addresses the psychological friction survivors will face.
What is the most common roadblock?
The most prominent roadblock is the feeling that you are avoiding the trauma.
Right. There is this pervasive cultural narrative that you have to face your demons head on. If you aren't actively crying in a therapist's chair or journaling furiously about your pain, society implies you are a coward running away from reality.
Dr. McGuinness provides a profound reframing of this narrative. Repetition is not avoidance. It is trauma processing readiness.
Processing readiness.
Think about a physical surgery. A surgeon will not operate on a patient whose blood pressure is critically unstable and who is actively fighting off a massive systemic infection. They stabilize the patient first.
Because the surgery itself is a trauma to the body, you have to be physically strong enough to survive the cure.
Exactly. If you try to cognitively process the profound betrayal of a scam while your nervous system is locked in fight or flight, you risk severe re-traumatization. Engaging in predictable repetition is not avoiding the work. It is actively preparing your physiological system to be strong enough and stable enough to handle the deeper psychological healing work later.
You are building self-regulation capacity.
Which directly combats the second major roadblock, which is the guilt about wasting time.
Oh, the guilt. Survivors frequently report immense guilt. They feel that rewatching a show is a lazy indulgence. They feel they should be researching legal options, working overtime to recoup the stolen money, or fixing their lives.
It is a very common feeling.
It reminds me of the guilt people feel when they get the flu. If you have a 103-degree fever, your bones ache, and you can barely stand up, no rational person tells you to get out of bed and be productive. No one says, stop indulging in sleep, you're wasting time.
No, of course not.
They tell you to lie down because the inactivity is the treatment. Your immune system requires all of your available energy to fight the virus. For a scam survivor, the nervous system is profoundly sick. Sitting on the couch watching a familiar movie isn't an indulgence. It is the targeted medical intervention required to lower the fever of the brain.
That is a highly accurate way to conceptualize it.
Yes.
You are not wasting time. You are performing essential, non-negotiable nervous system care.
What about the roadblock of simple boredom? Because, even the most brilliant movie in the world might feel a bit stale by the 40th viewing.
Boredom is a sign that the brain is no longer engaged enough to fully benefit from the predictability. The solution is rotation within the established boundaries of safety. You rotate options within your comfort content library, you swap the sitcom for a familiar audiobook, or you change the focal point of the engagement.
How do you change the focal point without changing the media?
You watch the familiar movie, but you challenge your brain to only pay attention to the background set design, or you listen only to the musical score. You maintain the absolute predictability of the plot, but you give the brain a slightly new, safe puzzle to engage with.
What happens if the unthinkable occurs and your safe media suddenly becomes unsafe? What if a scene in your favorite comfort movie unexpectedly triggers a memory of the scammer? Like maybe a character uses a phrase the scammer used, or a location reminds you of a fake photograph they sent.
The brain is highly associative, and these associative triggers are unfortunately common. When a piece of previously safe content suddenly triggers distress, the protocol is immediate cessation.
Just stop.
You pause the media immediately. You do not force yourself to push through it to prove you are strong. You ground yourself in your physical environment. Feel your feet on the floor. Count 5 things you can see in the room.
You respect the trigger.
You respect the nervous system's warning. You can return to that specific piece of media weeks or months later when you are more regulated, or you might decide that it no longer serves your healing journey, and you permanently remove it from your library.
The final roadblock listed is impatience for results, and I think this is the hardest one. We live in a world of next-day delivery and quick fixes. When you are in the agony of betrayal trauma, you just want a pill that makes it stop by tomorrow morning.
The desire for immediate relief is entirely understandable. But healing neurological trauma is fundamentally nonlinear.
Yeah.
You are physically rebuilding neural pathways and retuning neurotransmitter receptors. That biological reality just takes time.
It takes as long as it takes.
The nervous system requires cumulative, consistent, undeniable evidence over a sustained period to finally concede that it is safe to power down the alarms.
So if the healing is slow, and if it doesn't look like a sudden cinematic breakthrough where you wake up cured, how does the survivor actually know this repetitive practice is working? What are the subtle metrics of success?
We look for what the text terms progressive regulation improvement. You are not looking for the presence of joy initially. You are looking for the subtle absence of panic.
What does the absence of panic look like on a random Tuesday morning?
It looks like falling asleep in 20 minutes instead of lying awake for 3 hours listening to your heart pound. It looks like receiving an unexpected email notification and noticing that your breath only catches slightly rather than sending you into a full spiral.
Those small victories.
It is experiencing a completely unforced, quiet moment while drinking your coffee where you realize you haven't thought about the scam in the last 10 minutes.
It's the micro moments of peace expanding.
And a major indicator of profound progress is metacognition, the ability to observe your own nervous system. You begin to notice the exact moment your body starts to activate in response to a trigger. And because you possess that awareness, you have the capacity to deploy your repetition tools to intervene before it escalates.
You catch the spark before it becomes a forest fire. And once that baseline of stability is reliably established, the article outlines how this integrates with the rest of the recovery journey.
This is where the preparation yields its true value. Once the survivor has achieved reliable baseline regulation, they are finally equipped to successfully engage in those traditional demanding approaches. Talk therapy becomes highly effective because the nervous system can handle the complex processing of the trauma without shutting down. Somatic, body-based therapies can be utilized safely.
And crucially, the brutal logistical work of recovering from a scam becomes possible. Calling banks, filing police reports, speaking with fraud investigators, untangling the financial mess. You can do those tasks because you are operating from a foundation of grounded stability rather than raw, unmitigated panic.
The repetition practice does not replace the hard work of recovery. It makes the hard work biologically possible. And this is not merely a temporary crush to be discarded once the acute phase passes. The article emphasizes long-term regulation integration.
Meaning you keep this in your back pocket forever.
You retain strategic repetition as a lifelong tool. Long after the acute betrayal trauma of the scam has been processed and integrated, you can utilize these exact same repetition rituals to navigate heavy work stress, manage the anxiety of the holidays, or process difficult life transitions.
That is
The
wonderful.
profound familiarity and predictability that healed your broken nervous system today will continue to support your neurological health indefinitely.
I really want to reflect on the conclusion Dr. McGuinness offers in this piece, because it represents such a profound paradigm shift in how we view suffering and recovery. The traditional narrative demands that we fight our trauma, that we conquer it through sheer willpower and painful insight. But this approach suggests that recovery does not begin with forcing insight. It does not begin with pushing through the pain. It begins with safety. And predictability creates safety.
It is a quiet, gentle revolution in trauma care. Choosing to watch your favorite movie for the 100th time is not a surrender to the trauma. It is a powerful, active declaration by the survivor that they are claiming safety for themselves. It is the biological groundwork required so they can, eventually, learn to trust their own perceptions again.
It removes the crushing pressure of having to perform your healing for an audience. Healing doesn't have to be an exhausting, white-knuckled battle on day one. It can literally start with the gentle, undemanding embrace of a favorite worn-out paperback book.
It honors the physiological reality of the injury, offering the body gentleness after a profound violation, rather than demanding the victim simply get over it.
We are so often warned that the media we consume shapes our minds, usually framed as a dire warning about negative influences and screen time. But what if we viewed our favorite, deeply familiar media not merely as entertainment, but as a biological tuning fork? What if the most powerful, immediate, and accessible tool you have for taking back control of your hijacked nervous system is simply giving it the gift of a story where you already know with absolute certainty that everything turns out okay in the end?
That is a deeply powerful and empowering thought to carry forward into the recovery process.
And to everyone listening, we want to reiterate and amplify our opening message. If you are a victim or survivor of a scam, you do not have to navigate this dark, confusing, and painful terrain by yourself. We explicitly invite you to join the Scars Institute Survivors community. It is a space designed precisely for your support, your protection, and your long-term recovery. It is completely free, it is exceptionally safe, and it is entirely confidential. You can sign up right now and find people who understand exactly what you are going through at www.scarscommunity.org.
And to learn the crucial information you need to know right now to protect yourself from further harm and begin your logistical recovery, please visit www.scamvictimsupport.org.
Thank you for joining us for this Scars Institute Exploration podcast. We wish you safety, we wish you predictability, and we wish you profound peace on your healing journey.
Thank you for listening to our Scars Institute audio exploration podcast. Remember that this was not your fault, and you are not alone. But right now, there are things you need to know. Start by visiting www.scamvictimsupport.org. This will help you learn the basics that every scam victim and survivor needs to know now. We are here for you. We have created a free, safe, and confidential space just for you. You can learn and recover in the SCARS Institute's Scam Survivors Support and Recovery Community. To sign up, please visit www.scarscommunity.org. Answer a few questions to help us better support you and begin your recovery. This has been another in the SCARS Institute Audio Exploration podcast series. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe. We wish you all the best, and remember that the SCARS Institute is here to help. This podcast is copyright 2026 by the Society of Citizens Against Relationship Scams, Inc.